The first time Camille viewed the house, it blinked. Not an optical illusion. A glimmer. A wobble. The entire Victorian mansion creaked like something behind the walls let out a sigh. She should have left. Instead, she stepped over the gate, heels clicking on worn stone, pulled not merely by curiosity, but by a whisper that caressed her neck like the breath of a lover. "Come home." Camille did not believe in destiny. Not until she caught sight of Lucien in the mirror. The will in the whisper. Camille Laurent stood beneath a thunder-swollen sky, the key in her hand as icy as bone. She looked across at the manor beyond the wrought iron gate, Victorian, 3 stories, ivy blackened and curling like veins up its front. It seemed to have been sleeping for a century, and maybe it had. She had not cried when her uncle died. She hadn't even realized he had a name until the lawyer read it out of the will. Jean-Michel Laurent, reclusive historian, no children that anyone was aware of. The house had been his final gift, or legacy. Laurent blood always returns, the will had declared, pinned out in faultless handwriting, especially the daughter's. The gate groaned as she forced it open. Weeds crackled beneath her boots, and the air shifted like the air bent to welcome her. She froze on the porch. A breeze stroked the back of her neck. Not the air. A breath. She shivered. The door creaked open on its own. The first step inside was like plunging into warm waters, mothering, but strangely intimate. The scent of jasmine and old paper, curling wallpaper like parchment, sleeping chandeliers with dust. The entire house breathed around her. "This isn't haunted," she whispered. "It's remembering." In the foyer, the fireplace roared to life without her hand. Shadows exploded. Her reflection shuddered in the mirror above the mantel, but it wasn't hers. She remained motionless. The glass man wore a midnight blue coat, high collar, liquid mercury-colored eyes. He was unbearably lovely. Noble, maybe. European. And he was smiling, not cruelly, not sneeringly, but as though he recognized her. Her breath caught. She blinked. He disappeared. She leaned forward, fingertips tracing the mirror's frame. Then there was the whisper, a single sound. "Camille." Her knees collapsed. The room whirled. Thunder crashed, and the mirror went black. Rain beat against the windows as Camille awoke. She was on the velvet rug in the parlor, her coat soaked in sweat, not rain. The fire still danced. The mirror still did not speak. But still her name resonated in her mind like an echo within bone. She rose to her feet slowly, leaning against a carved mahogany chair for balance. The mirror showed nothing unusual now, just her white face, dark afro curls around her cheeks, and the slight smudge of red on her neck. Lipstick? Number. She hadn't put any on. She stroked the mark. It was like a kiss. She spent the next day wandering the manor. The rooms seemed odd hallways too long, ceilings too high, doorways that seemed to shift slightly when she wasn't looking. Camille wrote it off as fatigue, jet lag, grief perhaps. In the study, she found piles of journals, each with only date written on it. The first, 1811. The last, 2022. She opened one. It was French, lovely script, sketches of the Mannersome as it stood now, some in different centuries. Then, on the last page, "She comes again, different skin, same soul. The mirror remembers what we forget." Camille dropped the journal. Afterward, in the French Quarter Cafe on the corner, she ran into Ezra. He was a rumpled, late 30-something, with nicotine and ink-stained hands and bleary eyes. He'd responded to her online request for historical information about the house. She didn't have to explain who she was. "Laura?" He blinked. "You're Camille Laura?" "Yes," he exhaled. "Then you shouldn't be in that house." "Why?" She sipped coffee. "Because it's cursed?" "Because it needs you there." That kept her quiet. Ezra inched forward, his voice low. "There is no record of that manor before 1871. But there are stories, fairy stuff. Women who came into it, daughters of the line. They lived there. And then, they didn't. No bodies. No explanations. Just vanished." Camille frowned. "And?" He pulled out an old photograph, black and white, a woman on the manor steps. Her face was almost identical to Camille's. "She was spotted in 1943 the last time," Ezra said. "Her name was Vivienne Laurent." That night, Camille sat alone in the parlor, the journal in her lap. "Vivienne," she whispered, "who were you to him?" The mirror flashed, and the man reappeared. His hand on the glass, his eyes soft with longing. And on the cold surface, through fog and shadows, letters appeared. "You came back to me." The fire snapped low behind her, casting the parlor in a warm amber glow. Camille sat in front of the mirror, legs tucked up under her, the journal open on the floor beside her wine glass. She wasn't dreaming. He was real. The man in the mirror hovered an arm's length away, watching her. His silver-polished eyes gleamed in the dim light, and even from distance behind the glass, she felt the heat of his regard. Not fascination, recognition, worship. "You know me," she whispered. He nodded once, slowly. Then he reached out to lay his hand flat upon the back of the mirror. Without deliberation, Camille raised her hand and set it against the glass, putting it alongside his. A spark darted through her frame. She gasped. The feeling wasn't cold or detached, it was warm. It was electric. Her breath caught in her throat. The mirror vibrated into her fingers like flesh. "I don't get it," she whispered. "What are you?" His mouth moved, but she didn't hear the sound. The house groaned. And then, from deep within the walls, she heard a low moan. Not machinery, living, as if the house was possessed of a throat and was trying to speak. The lights flickered. She should have run. She pressed her other palm against the mirror, as if she could slip into him, into this past where time warped and reason thinned. Her head reeled. Her chest tightened, not fear, but longing. That evening, Camille dreamed of a candlelit ballroom. She wore a black, corseted gown, and the man Lucien'd her through a dance to music that seemed to come from the floor itself. "Tell me your name," she whispered as he spun her around. "Lucien." "Why me?" He leaned close, his mouth against her ear. "Because you are the echo of my curse, the love that keeps returning." She woke gasping, her skin burning. The mirror was black, but her neck had the faint mark of teeth. Later, she discovered a box of letters in the attic, unmarked, aged to yellow, all of them to Dearest Camille. The dates: 1823, 1850, 1909. All the same handwriting, all written as if to the same woman. One read, "I remember each version of you. You always come back to me, in shadow, in flames. In flesh I do not know, but in a soul I was never able to forget." Camille closed the box with trembling hands. The house knew her. Lucien loved her. But who was she before? And worse, what had she done? Rain lashed at the windows like a warning. The storm had been raging for 2 days. New Orleans streets were flooded, and the sky was heavy with the color of a bruise. But in the reflection house, Camille felt only heat. Lucien had not been seen since the dream. Silence was worse than his presence. She stood in front of the mirror, her reflection hazy from the steam rising off her skin. She had just stepped from the bath, hair still wet, robe half clinging to her damp body. "I know you're there," she said softly. "I can feel you." Nothing. She brushed her fingers along the mirror's surface. Cold, solid, dead. Then something shifted. Her reflection changed. Not a movement in an overlay, like a film reel projected over herself. Her own face radiating, and for a heartbeat, another woman gazed back. The same eyes, the same bones, but different older, dressed in 1940s silk, lips painted deep red, and weeping. Camille stepped back. "Vivienne?" she whispered. The woman in the mirror opened her lips, but the voice wasn't from the glass. It was behind her. A sob. Camille turned. There was no one there, but the room was cooler. Wet footprints led from the bathroom into the hallway, bare feet, small, like a woman's. But Camille hadn't changed positions. The mirror pulsed behind her. She turned back. Lucien was there again, no longer dressed in his finery, but in something dark shirt unbuttoned, throat etched with bruises and scratches, as if someone had once tried to claw the love from him. His eyes feral with something between hunger and loss. "Camille," he said. She heard it. Clear. His voice deep, accented, and pained. "Don't listen to her." "To who?" "The others." Her skin crawled. "There are others? They don't understand. They want to keep us apart." She swallowed hard, her heart racing. "What's wrong with them?" He didn't answer, just lifted his hand and laid it against the glass again. "Touch me," he whispered. "Be mine again." Camille hesitated. And then, her hand trembling, she took a step forward, but just as she reached out to touch it, a scream ripped through the mirror from inside. A woman's scream. "No, don't trust him." The glass shattered. Camille fell back screaming, covering her face from shattering shards. But when she looked again, the mirror remained intact, unbroken, and empty. The morning after, Camille walked the halls with half-sleeping eyes and a heartbeat that had never slowed since the scream. She hadn't slept. The moment she closed her eyes, hands reached out for earthen, blood-stained fingers, tracing her cheeks, whispering her name in a chorus of voices that were hers. She needed answers. Ezra had not responded to her messages. He'd warned her. Now she understood why. But still, she could not leave. The house, it wanted her to remain. And Lucien Hay was buried within it like a pulse, hidden in bone. She climbed the stairs to the east wing, following the cold in the air. Something was pulling her, certainly curiosity, but compulsion too. The same urge that drives people towards a voice in the dark, even though they're smarter than that. The final door at the end of the hall was locked, but the pin she wore on a chain around her neck, the one her uncle spoke of in his will, dropped into the lock as if it were its key. Inside was a gallery, large and dusty, with high windows hung with heavy velvet drapes. It held a dozen huge portraits. Camille gasped sharply as she stepped forward. Every one of the paintings was of a woman. They all had her face. Other hair, other gowns, other centuries. But the same dark eyes, the same mouth shape, the same soul looking out of the painting with sorrow and knowledge. In the center of the far wall was a painting of Lucien. Young, untainted, dressed in deep blue, an outstretched hand toward a woman beside him. Vivienne. Her hand was in his, her eyes distant, haunted. Somewhere under the frame, Camille found a brass plate. Lucien d'Artois and Vivienne Laurent, Betrothed 1842. She vanished. He died the same night. Neither was ever buried. A chill ran through her body. She looked once more at Lucien's painted eyes. They were different now. Focused. Living. Watching. Then something moved in the room's corner. She turned and saw a girl. White. Young. Clad in something from another century, with soggy hems and large, terrified eyes. She leaned near the corner mirror, lips shaking. "Go, you must go," the girl breathed. "Before he loves you too much." "What?" Camille stepped closer. "Who are you?" But the girl just shook her head and fell back into the mirror, disappeared like vapor. Camille ran to the glass and knocked her hand on it. Nothing. No Lucien. No girl. Just her own image. Alone. She turned from the portraits to the mirrors, lining the walls of the salon. Now, in each and every one of them, the lady's eyes had moved to regard her. And all of them were afraid. Camille didn't exit the gallery for hours. She stood beneath the painted eyes of her previous selves, shivering in quiet. The room hummed about her, the way a chapel hums after the final note of a hymn. She could feel the air shift oppressive, observing. Lucien had lied. He had to have lied. There had been others, dozens of them, and every one of them had loved him, and disappeared. She traced her finger along Vivienne's face, the slump of her shoulders, the curve of her lips. Not love, defeat. "Why didn't you resist him?" Camille panted. The house was silent. That night, the mirror returned. Lucien stood within it, not the suave nobleman she had originally met. He was bare-chested now, darkness twisted about his waist like smoke, hair rumpled, mouth open, not threat, but desire. "You saw them," he stated, his tone soft. "The ones that came before." Camille stayed quiet. He moved closer to the glass, placing his palm against it. "They were you. Other lifetimes. Same heart. We fall every time. The house keeps us from each other every time." She made her fists as tight as could be. "They're dead, Lucien. What happened to them?" He closed his eyes. "I tried to hold on to them," he said. "But love isn't a promise here. It's a binding. The house, it feeds on the attachment, on the yearning. The more we love, the more it owns. You vowed you loved them." "Yes, and I love you. You're the only one who keeps returning. You're the reason I'm still alive." Camille inched closer, trembling. "How do I stop it?" Lucien looked up at her, eyes blazing with desperation. "Not possible." The mirror pulsed. And now, it wasn't just Lucien and her anymore. Behind him, the mirror shattered into layers, rooms within rooms, each with a different Camille, stuck in moments of ecstasy and pain. One knelt over Lucien's corpse. Another wept in fire. A third bled on the ground, pregnant and curled. As a dark figure towered over her, Camille stumbled back. Lucien reached for her. "No, stay," he begged. "I can protect you this time. I know the house now. I can warp it. I can." A new voice cut across the room. Female. Cold. Ageless. "She doesn't belong to you." Camille turned. Vivienne stood in the doorway. No longer a ghost. She was flesh and breath and fury, dressed in black lace, hair tied back, lips red as an open wound. And her eyes, Camille's eyes burned with vengeance. "Hello, Camille," she said. "I've been waiting to get you out of this hell." Camille couldn't speak. Vivienne stood like a reflection brought to life, her movements mirroring Camille's with a spookiness that was uncanny. But her presence made a difference. Her heels creaked the floorboards. Her eyes cut through the bad light parlor like blades. Lucien vanished from the mirror the moment Vivienne appeared. He fled, and Camille felt the horror seeping in that he was afraid. Vivienne stepped into the light of the fire and let fall her gloves with deliberate loveliness. "Still as foolish," she replied, velvet voice laid over steel. "Still chasing after a man who isn't yours." "You're me," Camille whispered. "I was, once." Vivienne looked down into the hearth, as though remembering a flame that had consumed centuries. "Now I'm what's left after the house consumes your love and leaves you hollow." Camille's throat closed up. "Lucien told you I was first. That you vanished." "I didn't vanish," Vivienne snapped out. "I went down. This place seduces us. The mirror doesn't show us what we are. Shows us who we were. All of them. All our lives we lived. All moments we loved him." "And then you want me to leave?" Vivienne looked her right in the face. "Number I want you to finish." They sat in the library, candles flickering wildly around them. Vivienne lit a cigarette from a match that hissed like teeth's breath. "The house is alive," she said. "It was built of blood and bound with obsession. Lucien tried to cheat death rituals, mirrors, memory, binding. But he did not realize the price. It was not just his soul in the glass. You were bound too. We all were." Vivienne opened the old journal Camille had found. She went to a page Camille hadn't redone, scrawled in a wild hand, barely legible. She returns again. The cycle begins. Mirror devours. House consumes. Love revives, only to die again. Camille's breath was caught in her throat. "So what do? We break the mirror." Camille blinked. "That's it?" Vivienne's face darkened. "It isn't that simple. The mirror is the focal point. The house protects it. If you try, it will fight you. You'll see things you don't want to see. Things buried deep in the crevices of your soul you don't even know you possess." "And Lucien?" Vivienne's lips narrowed. "You're addicted to him. To every incarnation. He thinks it's love, but it's not. It's need. He can no longer tell the difference." Camille stared into the flames. She remembered the caress of Lucien's voice against her breast, the weight of his breath against her skin through the glass, the softness, the hurt. Was it possible? Vivienne rose to her feet. "Midnight," she said. "That's when the house is weakest. That's when we strike." And then she was gone, melted back into shadows, leaving only the scent of smoke and roses behind. When Camille stood before the mirror that night, Lucien was there again. He was tired, torn open by grief, like a man watching as the woman he loved walked off to war. "Don't listen to her," he cautioned, his voice scraping. "She's not what she seems." "Somebody as bruised as you," Camille gasped. Lucien stepped forward, pressed both hands against the glass. "I love you." The mirror seared. Camille saw herself in his arms kissing, laughing, dying. "I always have," he panted. "Just want one lifetime where I get to keep you." And somewhere, deep under the floorboards, something growled. The grandfather clock struck midnight. The sound didn't ring out, it vibrated through the floor, the walls, Camille's chest. It was as if the house itself had breathed. Vivienne met her by the black stairs, covered in satin and darkness. She clutched a crowbar in her left hand, and in her right a silver dagger, etched with sigils older than words. Camille followed her in silence. They descended to the cellar. Each step downwards felt like entering into a throat that would swallow them up. The air was thick, like wet velvet. The walls hummed with a beat. The mirror was downstairs. Not the one in the parlor or the gallery, but an older one, original, cemented into the foundation like a tumor. Enormous, floor to ceiling, edged in bone-white stone. and charred wood. It was more doorway than mirror. Vivienne lit 4 candles at every corner of the room. "They'll distract the house for a few minutes," she said. Not long. Camille stepped up to the glass. Her reflection did not follow her. It stayed behind, observing. Lucien was present, not in the glass but standing by her side. "Really, meet." He grasped her wrist. "Don't do this," he pleaded. "Camille, please." His tone was shattering and tempest. His eyes glittered with a kind of grief that shatters dynasties. "I discovered a way," he declared, "to anchor us, to keep you here. But if you break the mirror, I lose you again." Vivienne raised the crowbar. "You've lost her already." She swung. The metal hit the glass and bounced back. No crack, no shatter. Just a ripple, like she'd struck water. The house screamed. The candles flared. The walls pulsed. The door slammed shut behind them. Lucien snarled, no longer human, not quite demon. His face warped for a second, eyes turning black, teeth sharpening. "She is mine." Vivienne lunged at him. Camille ran to the mirror. Its shimmered and showed her everything. Every life, every death, every kiss, every betrayal. Herself, over and over, falling in love and crashing into despair. Always with Lucien, always here. And at the center of it, the house. Not a building, a presence, a god built out of pain and obsession. It spoke to her. Hold him, bind him, love him, bleed for him. Camille screamed and punched the mirror. It shattered. Light flashed out of the break like lightning. Lucien howled in agony. Vivienne screamed, and the mirror blew. The blow knocked Camille back. She fell to the floor, gasping, blood on her knuckles, ringing in her ears. Silence fell. When she opened her eyes, the mirror was gone. Just dust. Lucien was on the floor, falling apart, like ash blown by a wind. His eyes caught hers. No. He reached out a hand but disintegrated before he could touch her skin. Gone. Forever. Vivienne knelt next to her, shaking. "You did it," she gasped. "You finally broke the cycle." Camille didn't speak. She was crying, but she didn't know why. Camille stood before Lucien at the ball, all versions of herself looking back from the mirrors. Time distorted here. Past lives wept. Future ones hung on. He offered his hand, but it was her own voice echoing off the glass that broke the spell. "You don't owe him another death." Camille's breath caught. Lucien winced, his hand falling. "They don't understand." "I think they do," she whispered. She stepped away from him. The mirrors rippled. Lucien's voice cracked. "If you leave, I vanish." Camille looked back over her shoulder. Then vanish. She walked away. Lucien screamed and the mirrors shattered behind her. No blood this time. No fire. Just silence. And when she turned to look at him again, he wasn't there. The house fell apart. Not in destruction, but in disclosure. Walls curled back to expose ancient roots beneath the foundation veins. Rooms twisted into forms that were like rib cages and spines. The atrium chandelier beat like a heart. This house had never been home. It had been a body. A prison. Camille climbed the stairs as it convulsed. And then, at the top, she saw Vivienne in front of the last door. Her body pale, withering, but her eyes peaceful. "I just needed someone to finish the story," she said. "You did." Camille reached for her. Vivienne smiled and dissolved into dust. Camille lit every candle she could find. The house required a burial. As the walls burned, she moved room by room, saying goodbye not just to Lucian, but to every life she'd lived in these walls. The girl who kissed him under moonlight, the woman who bled for him, the mother who died screaming. She forgave them, and herself. Outside, dawn broke the sky open. Camille emerged into the light. Behind her, the reflection house burned, but the air was still. The cycle was complete. Weeks went by. Camille returned to the city. She had an old journal in her bag that she didn't recall bringing with her Vivienne's age. On the inside, there was a final message, written on the night before the shattering. If he ever comes back, let love be your sword, not your shackle. If ever you forget, remember, you are never to be caged. Camille finished the book, tears on her eyelashes. She looked at her own reflection in the window of the cafe. Only hers. No other. There were nights she dreamed of him. Not with fear. Not with desire. In stillness. He'd be reading a book or at the piano, and he'd look up and smile. Not pleading. Not aflame. Just Lucian. She'd awaken with tears on her pillow, but no fear. Only a longing that no longer pained. 1 year on, Camille stood in front of a gallery wall in New Orleans. A new series, The Broken Reflection. Her paintings had changed. No longer distorted images of herself. No longer anguished longing. Now, she painted individuals real, flawed, unencumbered. One canvas depicted a broken mirror. Another, a woman moving towards light as a man stretched out his hand from shadows. A critic once stopped her and said, "Is it a love story?" Camille smiled weakly. "No," she said. "It's a freedom story." And as she walked out of the gallery, she passed by a window. For a brief instant, in the mirror, a man stood beside her. Handsome, still, sad. Lucien. But she did not stop. She just smiled and walked on.